Okay, hello everyone. Good morning. It is now time to start our class. It's been a month or two, I guess, since I used Zoom. Hopefully my knowledge is still fresh, and I'll be able to move pretty quickly through this. So let me go then to the back to the Zoom screen here, and so I can see what you see. And there we go. So hello, everybody. We have a debate today as well, so we need to, that'll be for the second hour. But what I do want to do now is, of course, now make sure I don't accidentally shut down the course, and let me go to get this thing set up for the attendance. So we go to the attendance. Let me get that set up for you before I share the screen. And we are here in week 14. So smart attendance here. And now let me go back to Zoom and go here, and then go to share screen. And there it is. And there it is. And so you can see the screen now. And your start attendance number is 103. 103 is your smart attendance number. So please enter in 103, and also to get into the standard practice of setting this up. So let me go back to the so 103 is here it is. So we stop the share here, and then I go back to there, and of course now I want to put the number in the chat. And I go show chat, so chat, and then I put 103, got it, yes, okay, 103. 103 is the number there. So cancel there. So okay, 103. So all right. So let's I want to talk about, of course, you know that I've mentioned, oh, by the way, I didn't show you this, but you can see here in my pocket, I have the Italian flag. Uh, I got this at you can see it there at the Italian National Day celebration. It's held every June 2nd at the Italian ambassador's residence in UN Village, next to Hanam, close to Hanam metro stop in Seoul. And so, since I'm registered to vote here in Seoul, I get the invitation to this event. And of course, there are way too many people there. It looks like it's a big event. I mean, it's something of a schedule. So we got some gifts, some minor gifts to take with us. And of course, I was supposed to put this in my pocket when I entered, but I didn't have a pocket. So well, when I was there on Monday night, so I just wanted to show you. I got also a bag of Italian gifts, but it was lady or woman oriented, lady oriented. So I gave it to the secretary in the department. Basically, one of the functions of that celebration is to promote Italian products, food, of course, food, wine. So that was all highlighted there. So, okay, so let me again talk a bit about the what's going on today in the news world, just to show you why this is all really interesting and exciting for you as students of European politics and society. So if we go then to the I think I have too many things open here. So let me close some screens some things I have opened up. So we can close that one as well. All right, so let me go back then to the screen share, and we go here and share the screen, and you can see my lesson plan for today, and here, and there you can see the lesson plan. And so Isabella is going to be con against me, pro, and so I think this is the first time we've had the debate on Zoom, so it'll be exciting. And so I was showing you. Bulgaria has been agreed on Wednesday. The European Commission and European Central Bank issued their convergence report and said that yes, Bulgaria is ready to join the Eurozone. And so now there's some final negotiations with the European Union member states and the European Parliament, which are, according to media commentary, is supposed to be pretty much just not it's not going to be an obstacle that they will get into the Europe. Bulgaria will join the Eurozone on January 1, 2026 as the 21st member state of the European Union's 27 member states to join the Eurozone. And I was showing before we started, I was showing you that news report about the election in Poland where the far-right candidate won the election in a very close race. Again, also reaffirming it as a consequence, Poland's lack of desire or unwillingness to join the Eurozone. So Poland stands along with Poland, Czech Republic, Sweden, Hungary, and Denmark have not joined the Eurozone. And so the Slovakia has, of course, Slovakia has joined the Eurozone. And as you can see, the debate topic you were paragraphs on is maybe the Eurozone was a mistake because perhaps the Eurozone might be politically fragile, right? Perhaps the Eurozone is a project which did not foresee, for example, the election of Donald Trump and re-election in 2024. And that's a major challenge to the European Union and the Eurozone members in particular, because what if Donald Trump is oriented towards I already sent you the message. I got a chat. What is the message? What is the number? I said it's 103. I since I send again. So back to the share screen. The the so the And of course, we could say that if a country joins the Eurozone, it will never leave. Of course, we point to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom was not in the Eurozone, and there was always resistance to joining the Eurozone when the Maastricht Treaty was signed by the British, and the Lisbon Treaty, in 2009 was signed by the British, but they weren't particularly happy about it. But back in the 1990s, when a more pro-European Union government was in power in Britain under Tony Blair and the Labour Party, he wanted to bring Britain into the Eurozone, but he had promised in his election campaign that he would only do that if there was a referendum. That he would only bring Britain into the Eurozone if Britain first had a referendum to approve it. And so, since he knew that if they had that referendum, the British would probably vote no, he never had the referendum. So he never had the referendum, and then and so we know what happened later. Then, of course, the Conservatives came back into office, and under David Cameron in the early 2000s and 10s, and he, of course, not only did not have a Eurozone referendum, he eventually would agree on his second campaign, David Cameron, that if he was reelected in 2015, that he would have another referendum on staying in the European Union itself. So, we know how that happened. But so you might say, well, the European Union, if you're in the European Union but you're not in the Eurozone, it's a little bit easier to leave than if you're in the Eurozone. And true, and no country's ever been in the Eurozone and left. So we don't really know what that is like. But I highlighted in my comments to you on your paragraphs that there's been some discussion about what it would take to leave the European Union. I mentioned that Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz, who worked for the World Bank, who is a Eurozone skeptic. He predicted 10 years ago that he thought the Eurozone was doomed. And I think I can even show you the reports. I mean, if I look here, I don't really want to spend too much time looking for this right now, if it's not really immediately available. But he was making comments about how leaving the Eurozone is not going to be difficult to do, and you might need to leave because it's not going to be. It's too fragile. Basically, the Eurozone is too fragile, and he even condemned the Eurozone. He said that Greece's reforms that it had to adopt as part of conditionality to get access to what turned out to be 300 billion euros in loans to help Greece recover from its sovereign debt crisis, that this is causing tremendous economic dislocation in Greece because Greece could not use its monetary policy to recover. It had to carry out far-reaching reforms that caused tremendous suffering. We covered in class how in Greece The economy declined by some estimates one quarter, 25%. As a consequence of responding to the sovereign debt crisis, carrying out far-reaching economic reforms. I remember Joseph Stiglitz commenting upon. Let me see if I can just call up the um, and what did I? Yeah, oh yeah, here it is, of course. His comments, if I can call up his website here. So first, of course, the way to do this is I got to open up the website first before I try to share screen. Otherwise, it won't show. So I've got to go Wikipedia, and if I type in Joseph Stiglitz, he was highlighting how there it is, Joseph Stiglitz. And so we go here. Let me now stop share and then share the screen. He was a very harsh critic of the Eurozone and the conditionalities being placed on Greece as being within the Eurozone. You can see chief economist of the World Bank. He said, I am convinced that the Eurozone is doomed. He criticized the conditionality. Conditionality is that term that we use in international finance, that you get the loans from the European Union or from the International Monetary Fund on the condition that you first carry out agreed reforms in your economy to fix the macroeconomic destabilization problems within it. And if these are too harsh, and he was predicting that, significant percentage of Greeks would have to leave Greece to go get jobs, particularly young people who can't get jobs. And I was thinking as he was making these comments, but what about the former communist countries? We already covered how 2.5 million Bulgarians have left Bulgaria since 1990 to get jobs, and 80% of those people have skills. They have college degrees, right? And that's true in Romania. That's true with Albania. That's true with Poland. That's true with all of the former communist countries. And of course, he would not say that, of course, those countries made a mistake by trying to join the European Union and carrying out their economic reforms to join the European Union, which required, what was called the shock therapy approach. I mean, I told you how Jeffrey Sachs, that famous economist who's all over YouTube criticizing the United States these days and the West for their political policies, how he was the intellectual author of the economic transition policies for the former communist countries to begin the transition from communism to capitalism. And his recommendation policy was often labeled the shock therapy approach, right? That this had to be done pretty much all at once. Otherwise, you would have economic disturbances that would imbalances that would lead to even worse situation. But very, very difficult, very, very radical. Even if the communist system was disastrous, even if the communist system was bankrupt, even if it was not even able to provide the basic minimum needs of its people, it still was familiar. Now you're going to revolutionarily transform that overnight, and of course it worked. Well, it depends on your understanding of the word. For the Poles, of course, Poland was the was the experiment site for this, and we talked about that in class. Jeffrey Sachs came to Poland. I saw him on television when I was there being interviewed, explaining what he was doing. And of course, he had his Polish advisors working with him to carry out this shock therapy approach. And it was really radical. And of course, yes, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Polish people left Poland after 1990, and particularly after 2004, when Poland joined the European Union in 2004, 21 years ago. But today, Poland is considered to be the economic success story. All right, its economy has doubled in size since it's joined the European Union, according to one report. In the last 21 years, Poland is twice as big economically. It's growing the fastest of all the major economies in Europe. So good job, Poland, right? But of course, millions of Polish people left Poland to go to Britain, to go to the United States, to go to Australia, to go wherever they could to make some money, right? And so he criticizes the European Union's policies, I mean, and the United States policies for helping Greece get out of the sovereign debt crisis, because hundreds of thousands of Greeks would have to leave Greece. He didn't complain about that for the Romanians, for the Bulgarians, for the Poles. And I guess you could say, well, maybe because he thought it wasn't going to work. It apparently did work. I mean, in Greece, it did work. I mean, we covered last year when I taught this course, and I showed you again, now Greek government is able to get and sell its bonds to get investors all over the world, in Europe and China and Japan and South Korea, to buy Greek debt bonds at the same rate that they buy an Italian debt bonds, or they buy other country debt bonds, right? Just about a percentage higher than the German bonds, because the German bonds are considered the gold standard, the safest, most secure in return, right? So apparently it is working. Greece is growing and it's recovering. So and so the reason I mention is because is this Eurozone really a mistake? From my understanding, my criticism of Joseph Stiglitz is that he's not a political scientist, right? He's an economist. Jeffrey Sachs is not a political scientist; he's an economist. But they don't really have a strong understanding, or a way to, I should say, a strong way to conceptualize the role of political capacity, right? For Poland, this was necessary to return Poland to Europe. They had to do this not only for their own economic prosperity, but because they desperately wanted to, collectively as Poland, a nation state that's 95% Polish since World War II, right? That they wanted to do this, and they were able to do it despite the revolutionary changes that it required in people's behavior, right? And he doesn't seem to understand. I mean, I'm not criticizing him. I mean, it helps to have a good theory of nationalism, which I'm all in the study of nationalism. And of course, Bulgaria. I mean, they're not as anti-Russian as the Poles are traditionally anti-Russian. The Bulgarians are traditionally pro-Russian. So, as I mentioned in my comments in your paragraphs, making those sacrifices, in terms of cutting yourself off from Russia, distancing yourself from Russia, not exploiting Russian potential opportunities, not exploiting Russian economic resources. That's something for Bulgarians. That's more problematic, right? Because throughout their entire history, they view themselves as culturally deeply connected to Russia. I mean, I'm not saying that determines all politics. I mean, Bulgaria, for example, was on the side of Germany and Austria during World War I against the Russians, and the French and the English. So, I mean, that doesn't stop governments from doing what they want to do. But of course, the point is that in Poland, after the end of communism, there was this desire to, quote, return Poland to Europe, right? And that was very attractive to Bulgarians. But for Bulgarians, they don't want to believe that Russians are not Europeans. They don't like that. They don't react as strongly the way that the Poles do to that. So, there's more. I mean, I think I showed you, starting in that video, about how, according to public opinion surveys, if you ask Bulgarians, do you want to join the Eurozone on January 1, 2026? And more than half say, no, I don't think we're ready. Maybe in the future, we're not ready yet. And they say that it's not because they're pro-Russian. They say that, I think, because they don't trust their own government. They don't trust their own institutions. They think that somebody's going to rip them off in this process, and they're not, and they don't, and because they don't understand it, and they're very afraid of it because they think somebody's going to steal from them. Somebody's going to make money at their expense, and that means they're going to suffer. And so. And so again, this role of nationalism is important, right? But I mean, he looks like he was wrong, and these people are not modest people, right? So he's probably not going to admit that he was wrong. He's going to get defensive. I do have to say that I have to respect him, Joseph Stiglitz, for making predictions. Because if you make a prediction, you're putting your reputation out there. And you made a prediction and you were wrong. So now you have to deal with that. And I think we should be doing lots of more prediction in social science, including in political science, right? And because it looks like Greece has gotten out of its sovereign debt crisis, and the eurozone is working, and the European Central Bank has worked. And so but is it going to work in the future? I mean, again, as we highlighted in my comments, right? When Greece was going through its sovereign debt crisis, Barack Obama was president, right? Pro-European Union, wanting to collaborate with the International Monetary Fund and the European Union and European Central Bank, and also particularly with Berlin, with the German government. Yes, now but now what if we have another debt crisis? What if we have another financial crisis under the Trump administration? Is the Trump administration not even does it have a positive attitude? It's Donald Trump himself has stated negative comments about the European Union, that it was formed to, quote, screw over the United States. And we don't even talk about competence. Is it even competent to deal with another financial debt crisis in the European Union with its own debt crisis, not to mention a European one? So the conditions have changed, right? And so you can read here, but he did not like the eurozone. So okay, so let's go back then to some discussions here. So yeah, let me stop the share and go back to the lesson plan. And here is the lesson plan. Where is the lesson plan? The lesson plan. There it is. So we go share, and you can see here. See, what do I want to highlight here in terms of yeah, and so now we have a United States that's not only not supportive, it might be predatory. So of course here's a report that in the New York Times, which I can easily show you because I'm on my computer, about how now the United States is putting 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Europe and the rest of the world. The United Kingdom gets a break because the United Kingdom only gets a 25% duty. So this went into effect on Wednesday. So if you're a Brexiteer, you support British Brexit, you're saying, see, it was a good idea for us to leave the European Union because the United States is not beating up on us the way it's beating up on the other European Union countries. And of course, so you can read this on your own. I just wanted to show you that now, I mean, wanted to highlight that the Donald Trump administration not only is not enthusiastically supportive of European integration, it's adopting policies that differentiate between the British and the European Union, that favor the British over the European Union in terms of how much they're punishing them. Now you might say, well, maybe this will motivate the Europeans to cooperate more closely to deal with not only the Russian threat, but now with the American threat. And okay, maybe they can do it. But then, you get people like Nawrocki gets elected in Poland as president, and he's supposedly not even interested in a European army, European defense organization. He doesn't think it will work, and he thinks Poland, to protect itself, has to stay closely allied with the United States. But the United States under Trump utilizes that to pull Poland further away from the European single market. Now I know Poland is not in the Eurozone, right? It's not in the Eurozone. But maybe, of course, if Poland leaves, maybe Slovakia would think about leaving the Eurozone if it got a good deal on the border with Poland and Hungary to cooperate more closely with the United States. Czech Republic is not in the Eurozone. So these are what they were called originally the Visegrad Group. And Visegrad is a town. It's a town. I think I can't remember where the town is, but it was these four most developed former communist countries that agreed to cooperate with each other in interacting with the European Union, the United States, the Visegrad Group. So if I go, let's use the magic of Zoom, and let me type in Visegrad Group to see what comes up here. So Visegrad Group, just to show you. And of course, this is all kind of emotional for me in a sense, because if I go to the share screen, these were the four countries that were the leaders in reforming and joining the European Union, Visegrad Group, right? So this is the Visegrad Group. And now, of course, this is the Czechia, and here's Slovakia. They used to be called Czechoslovakia. These were the countries that were most advanced, most pro-Western, most part of Middle Europe, right? And now they're the countries with that are, you would call them Eurosceptic. There's Poland, there's Hungary with Viktor Orban and his Fidesz party. They're not in the Eurozone either. Here's Czechia, which is not in the Eurozone as well. But Slovakia is. Here is Slovakia, right? And Slovakia, they did join the Eurozone. And for a time, Slovakia, they were the biggest target of foreign direct investment for manufacturing cars in perhaps all of Europe. I mean, there was one report I remember that says Slovakia produces more cars per person in that country than any place else in the world. So it's like a big center for foreign direct investment for automobile manufacturer. And they did join the euro, right? And they did join the euro because they don't have a problem. They're not suspicious of the Germans the way Czechia is. Remember, this area was annexed by Germany in 1938 under the Munich Agreement. They forced Czechoslovakia, it was called back then, to give up this territory here on the border with Germany. It was called the Sudetenland, the southern lands where 3.5 million Germans lived. And Hitler said they have to be freed from their oppression by those bad Czechs by being able to join the Reich, the motherland. And so it was his excuse to begin to break up this country by taking the Sudetenland. And of course, Britain was government was led by Neville Chamberlain, and Daladier was the leader in France, and they agreed, they acquiesced to Germany, they appeased Germany by letting Germany take the Sudetenland. So all those Germans were expelled, right, from Czech Republic, Czechia during and after the war. And so I don't know why Czech Republic has not been willing to join the Eurozone, but I suspect part of it is because they still have this phobic fear that they don't want too much German influence, and they think that basically Germany is the rock, the foundation upon which the Eurozone is based, which is right, which is correct, which is true. So all of these countries are now more or less Eurosceptic, and one of them has joined the Eurozone. So what if Donald Trump were to approach them and say, let's make a separate trade deal and a security deal for these countries here? And of course, here is Ukraine, right? And here's Belarus. There's a little bit of Russia called Kaliningrad. In Königsberg used to be Königsberg when it was part of Prussia, and that's the Suwalki corridor that everybody's talking about. That when Russia supposedly, if it wins in Ukraine, it's then going to, since it's already de facto annexed, basically Belarus is going to try to maybe move here against Lithuania and Poland to take this territory, this gap, the Suwalki gap, in order to link up this part of Russian territory with Belarus. So, so I guess that's the situation we face. Is the Eurozone and the European Union more broadly basically a product of American hegemony? It's a regime. We used to talk about regime theory 40 years ago in political science, that the European Union is a cooperative regime that in order for it to exist, it has to assume that there's a cooperative, supportive American security hegemon that makes it feasible. And that was pretty much assumed to be always there until Donald Trump got reelected in November 2024, November last year. So 6 months ago, 7 months ago. And now they're faced with this challenge from not only Moscow but the United States. So let me go then to the notes. So let me stop the share and let me open up my notes here. So let me go to let me see here. Scroll forward in my files here to go to the notes. And we'll go here. Yeah, just a second here. Europeanization economy. So yeah, let me, of course, and then we go back to Zoom, and I go here, and I go share a screen, and we go here, and of course, here are the notes. And so, so Europeanization has become a much more polarizing concept since the sovereign debt crisis. Again, and it's manifested itself in different ways. Like again, I told you about the Alternative for Deutschland party, the AfD party. That party first, which is now, according to public opinion surveys, the second or even the first most popular party in Germany today, right? And it's one of the biggest parties in the German Bundestag, in the German government, in the German parliament. That started originally in a hostile reaction to Germany appearing to provide most of that 300 billion euro loans to Greece. That's how the AFD got its start. And then it began to fade. The AFD began to fade after, the sovereign debt crisis appeared to be stabilized and until in 2015, 2016, Angela Merkel, the chancellor of Germany, then agreed to allow in 1 million refugees into Germany who were stuck in Eastern Europe and in Greece after the collapse of Iraq and Syria and the fighting in Afghanistan. And then the AFD reemerged around immigration, right? So Europeanization has become a much more polarizing concept. And of course, you can either respond to this polarization by dismantling European integration, the way, for example, immigration into Britain led to the rise of the Brexit movement, led by Nigel Farage and others. Or, the response can be more integration. And that seems to have been the response of the European Union leadership for the most part, that when they're faced with a crisis, including hostility to European integration, they respond with even more integration, right? So in response to the sovereign debt crisis, you had the Stability and Growth Pact. You also had more financial cooperation, and you saw more movement forward on integration, but notably doing it without so much focusing upon getting popular referendum support. So it's just rare that the European Union has any kind of referendum. I think the most recent referendum I recall any country in Europe having over some European Union policy was a referendum in the Netherlands that was part of Dutch law that allowed for an informal referendum on the opinion of the people in the Netherlands on whether or not to allow Europe to have a free trade agreement with Ukraine. And of course, the Dutch voted no in that referendum, but the referendum was not binding. It wasn't legally binding. So basically, the Dutch government didn't listen to it, right? And so Ukraine did eventually sign a free trade agreement with the European Union in 2014, and Russia responded with what's beginning to try to tear apart Ukraine. But and of course, you see, now the Dutch government has fallen after Geert Wilders of the far right anti-immigration party in Netherlands was unhappy about the Dutch not stopping more immigration. But they just seem to always respond with more integration. So, okay, but going back to the notes, right? Britain and Ireland, they were countries that were more focused upon allowing free market economics to work. So of course, Ireland has a problem with Britain. So Ireland, because of history, because of Irish nationalism, they have, since they joined the European community back in 1973, together with the United Kingdom, Britain, and Denmark, they become the most ardent supporters of Europeanization. So yeah, we talk about being more free market oriented, but at the same time, it seems like culture has the final say in the form of nationalism over a country's European orientation. So, Ireland does not have a problem with European economic integration. Although you could say that other countries like Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Austria, they're more comfortable with European integration in the sense that they've always had a closer understanding or more comfortable understanding with this notion that the construction of a market requires political leadership. If you're going to create a single European market, a single market, it's not going to happen magically by removing trade barriers. Yeah, you're going to have to remove trade barriers, but that's not enough. You've got to come together and decide common sets of rules and regulations for regulating an incredibly complicated, advanced, developed industrial economies. It sounds easy, but it's not. The most obvious case that you know about is, for example, the cell phones, right? I told you when I was in Bulgaria 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if I wanted to call somebody in Greece, it was incredibly expensive, even though it's only 100 kilometers away. €1 a minute I would have to pay. So now you have roaming throughout the European Union to create that single European market in cellular phone usage that required a tremendous amount of political effort, a tremendous amount of political and administrative energy and resources and negotiation and bargaining and compromise, right? To create this single market in cellular telephone usage, right? And the Germans and the Swedes, because of their history, including the fact, particularly like and go outside of Europe to talk about, for example, the Japanese, right, or the South Koreans. South Koreans is a great example of that. These countries have always had to view economic development as a national security issue explicitly, consciously, in terms we use today. National security is a concept, a term that emerged after World War II. Okay, so but the point is that in Germany, for example, the German government had to develop Germany because they needed a strong military. You're not going to have a strong military if you don't have a strong economy, which means you need steel industries, you need coal industry, you need railroads, all of those things, right? And that means you have to make this happen if you're the government. It's not going to happen through the magic of the marketplace, like Americans like to believe. Americans are the worst because they rejected their European monarchic British experience, and they like to believe that business happens naturally, that the market works naturally, spontaneously. And big government is something of you view with suspicion. You need a government because you need to have police to arrest the thieves and the criminals. You need a court system because you have to adjudicate disputes. You need a prison system to put the thieves and criminals in them. And you might sometimes need to create an army because you might have to go to war. But otherwise, the government is viewed with suspicion. The government is a danger because the view that the government is basically filled with parasites who want to use their political power to enrich themselves without being successful as business people in the marketplace, like Donald supposedly was, right? Americans love business people, supposedly self-made men, even if they're not, right? Donald Trump was not a self-made man. His daddy gave him almost $500 million. His daddy bailed him out when his businesses were in trouble more than once. But he knows he has to sell himself that way. But of course, the point is in Germany and Japan and South Korea, there's not a problem with understanding or viewing the fact that the government should play a leading role in developing the economy. And capitalism is a tool for that. It's a tool. So then you have state-influenced market economies. They display a post-war interventionist state. They include France, Portugal, Spain, and Greece, right? And so, France is more statist than the Germans because of, the Germans basically don't have a good experience with being statist. And so Spain, of course, came out of Franco's dictatorship. Italy came out of Mussolini's dictatorship. But a point, again, this notion, the European Union is more comfortable as a concept with these cultures in these states than say it is in Britain. And of course, Britain has this belief that, they can rely upon the Americans, the Canadians, the Australians, and their former empire to, basically give them opportunities that are not available to the Germans, for example. So I'm not saying it's an accurate understanding, okay, but that's can be sort of a wishful thinking. But the British are trying to still figure out what to do, and of course that goes back to this notion. I mean, can you really leave the European integration? I mean, okay, Britain's no longer in the European Union, but of course Norway's not in the European Union. Iceland is not in the European Union, but Switzerland is not in the European Union, but they're still integrated with the European Union, just not as members of the European Union, right? I mean, we already covered how Switzerland has signed like 140 different treaties with the European Union to regulate its economic interaction so it becomes part of the single market within the European Union. But it's not in the European Union, but it's still part of the single market. So there's different ways to integrate. It's just, again, it goes back to how you define what integration is. Integration, from my perspective, integration is basically the conscious legal acknowledgement that we shall recognize our interdependence and regulate it and exploit it. And we do that as a conscious legal acceptance and framework for doing that. And that includes allowing countries to, be willing to look inside my country and say, we don't really like how you treat your farmers because the way you treat your farmers is a disadvantages to our farmers. And so you have to talk. You don't tell your the people complaining to go to hell. You gotta talk, you gotta cooperate around that. And you signed a treaty that you're going to cooperate, right? So that's why, again, the foundation of European integration is international law. Okay, so, and then of course you have the fourth category of countries, former communist East European countries, constituting a fourth variety of capitalism. And, some of these far right countries, under far right governments, they love Donald Trump, they love America, but at the same time, it's not easy. Even if you're a Polish nationalist who says, I hate communism, I hate what the Soviet Union did to us, there were some nice things about communism. I mean, you could retire at 55 years old. You could, I mean, even when I was in Poland before, when communism was still there, I mean, there was a really lenient, you didn't really have to work in communist Poland or in communist Russia. I mean, there was an expression in communism. They pretend to pay us and we pretend to work under communism. I mean, it was really hard to get fired. You didn't have unemployment. If you could always get a job, even if you're paid nothing, and it was a stupid job, you always got a job because that's what communism is all about, right? And so there wasn't, it was bad, but it had its positive sides. That now, of course, you got to hustle, and if you don't speak a foreign language or you don't have a college degree, you're in trouble. Yeah, I should say the dreams you had when your country was going to join the European Union, that the angels of heaven would come down, the angels of European heaven would come down and bring wealth and well being and prosperity to all of Poland, all of Bulgaria, all of Romania, all of Hungary. It didn't happen. It's been good for about a third of the population, the people that do have college degrees, the people that can speak a foreign language, that are young and have energy and are not sick. Yeah. And even they're having difficulty because, as I said, right, 2.5 million people left Bulgaria, and 80% of those people had college degrees. People typically, they're adventurous people, but people typically don't want to leave home. They don't want to leave their mom and dad. They don't want to leave their brothers and sisters. They don't want to go live in another country where they don't know anybody and they have to start from. I mean, it's not easy. And these are the brave people that left. And they left because they felt they had to, because they couldn't make any money at home. And they needed to make money not just for themselves, but for their family back home who expected them to send money back home. So, European integration has been very, very stressful. And it's been part of this revolutionary process that's not been so violent. If you join the European Union, you can't engage in violence, right? But it's still been revolutionary, and nationalism emerges amidst the acceleration of change, the acceleration of the pace of social change. When that happens, there's more stress, there's more anxiety, there's more insecurity, and you get more predisposition to look for security and status affirmation, dignity affirmation by appealing to national identity. And nationalism associates with stereotyping, self versus other, and emotion, and also on a foreign policy level, relative overestimation of power capabilities. So perhaps it's not surprising we see the rise of reactionary populism in Poland, in Hungary, in Slovakia, because they are the most advanced, most developed of these countries coming out of communism. Okay, yeah. So, but they're still in the European Union, and nobody is talking about taking Poland. Well, I'm not. Can't say nobody, but there was some commentary years ago about Polexit, but it was commentary in the media. I don't think anybody seriously in Poland that's a political actor wants to take Poland out of the European Union. Same with Hungary, same with Slovakia. Okay, so again, you can see, coverage of what's been going on in these countries. Um, and and again, now Poland and now the European unions are being really hit hard by the war in Ukraine after the pandemic. Then, right after the pandemic, being hit by the consequences of the war in Ukraine. Those consequences of the war in Ukraine mean the loss of cheap Russian energy, the loss of cheap Russian oil and gas and coal, and now the extent to which Europe really relied on cheap Russian energy to be competitive in its exports in world marketplace for its exports is really becoming evident as Poland attempts to, as the European Union tries to break itself away from utilizing cheap Russian oil and gas. And we're not certain how the Europeans can compete with the increasingly predatory United States and a competitive China without being able to rely upon access to cheap Russian energy. And that point comes up again and again and again in the news reports, right? That energy costs for European producers have skyrocketed, and that has made German exports, other exports of other countries to the rest of more expensive and less competitive. And so, what has I've seen estimates that it's caused the costs of inputs into production to increase twice as much. And so, the extent to which uh, the European Union was really dependent upon cheap Russian energy is a glaring issue. So, how were the Europeans responding? Right? You could say if they were so dependent upon Russian cheap energy, why did Russia risk all of that dependency by going to war with Ukraine over Ukraine? And it's a good question. I mean, again, nationalism associates with stereotyping and overestimation of relative power capabilities. Russia probably decided that, first off, it thought that it could take Ukraine relatively quickly, and that the Europeans would not protest too much if this didn't go on too long. I mean, Russia has over 300 billion euros frozen in international bank accounts that are stuck there because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What does that tell me? Russia didn't expect this thing to last long. They thought they would move in Ukraine, it would be over fast, and the Europeans and the Americans would acquiesce to it. And they were wrong in all counts. And so how and so they and of course then as they were wrong, they've now decided that they're going to make this the place, their final stand, their hill on which they will defend their efforts to make themselves respected as a great power equal to the United States. And so, I mean, that's a topic I've already covered in class more than once. So I don't really want to focus too much on it again, other than to say that the Europeans have to deal with the fact that they have got to come up with major policy strategies to make their economies competitive, and while also dealing with security requirements, security needs that they can no longer depend upon the United States. And in fact, the United States might even be a problem. The United States might even be a security threat. So if I go back to this, of course, this report here, and then of course, what's the evidence that the United States is a predatory threat? Well, now it's putting on tariffs on Germany, and now even threatening even more economic hardship for the Europeans by putting on these 50% tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum in the United States from Germany and the rest of the European Union, while the United Kingdom only has to get a 25%, right? And basically, you see statements like this: most of the 3.8 million tons, it says here, most of the 3.8 million tons of EU steel exports to the United States are now under de facto import ban. I mean, this is horrible, right? Um, And so it might only get worse. So then let me go back to the shared notes here. So we go back to the lesson plan. And yeah, so and now the United States is talking itself about there are efforts that I'm highlighting here just because I want to show that. Let me see if I got to stop the share. So well, what's this? Does this come up easily? Maybe it will. Okay, so here, Europe wants to banish Russian gas. The U.S. doesn't want to even banish Russian gas. So this report is a story about how the American business people are trying to buy the Russian gas pipelines that supplied gas to Germany and the rest of Europe, the new gas pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Meanwhile, the Europeans are trying to cut their reliance upon cheap Russian gas. It sounds as if, again, it's just another report that the Trump administration doesn't take the European Union seriously and is wants to cooperate with Moscow. Like they want to go back to buying Russian oil and gas, despite the Europeans not wanting to buy Russian oil and gas and having to make all these sacrifices to try to not buy Russian gas, not so much oil, but gas. So this is from yesterday's New York Times. It's just further evidence that the Trump administration is a problem. It's increasingly a problem for the Europeans. And how are the European Union going to respond to this? Well, let me show you. Again, I have to go back to stop share, or let me show you this, right? The Draghi report. This came out even before Trump was elected in November 2024. So if we click here, you can see the Draghi report. This is highlighting that, let me see, make sure you can see the right screen. So we can stop share, go back to the share screen. So here's the Wikipedia entry for the Draghi. Now, Mario Draghi was the European Central Bank president during the Greek sovereign debt crisis, Mario Draghi. And he was the one that declared that the European Central Bank would do whatever is necessary to protect Greece within the Eurozone. And that, was described as a fundamental turning point in the development of the European Central Bank and the euro, because the European Central Bank announced that it would do whatever it takes to make sure that somebody will buy Greek debt, Greek bonds. This is 15 years ago. Well, 13 years ago is when Mario Draghi made this statement in 2012. And by those words coming out of his mouth, it reassured investors that European Union was committed to the Eurozone. Once you join the Eurozone, you're never going to leave. They were going to they would do whatever was necessary for the Greeks to be able to sell their bonds because the European Central Bank would buy them. So Greece is never going to default. Never. You understand? Because the European Central Bank will buy Greek bonds. And that means you investors can count on that. And that was a turning point. So he gets a lot of credit for that. It wasn't just him, of course. It was the European countries that are in the Eurozone. It was also the European finance ministers. ECOFIN is the Council of European Union when it meets of the economics and finance ministers called the ECOFIN Council. So all of the ECOFIN members, all of the central bank governors. So once you join the Eurozone, the Bulgarian central bank governor, he will become part of the European Central Bank Board of Governors. So Bulgaria will get a voice in setting European Central Bank policy officially because it will be in the Eurozone. And you might wonder, well, if you're a Polish nationalist, wouldn't you want to be on the European Central Bank Board of Governors so that the Polish Central Bank governor would be one of those people setting the policies for the European Central Bank? And I guess, it didn't really appeal so far to Polish nationalists. I mean, I think I might have mentioned, Sweden is also not in the Eurozone. Sweden is a rich, prosperous country. Sweden is supposed to join the Eurozone, but it hasn't. But I think because of the skepticism around the stability of the Eurozone. But um, I don't want to digress too much because we're already going into our second hour pretty soon here. So again, the future of European competitiveness was the name of his report, and you can see, and you can download it. And he's saying that basically the European Union has to invest $500 billion a year in its economies in order to be competitive with the Chinese and the Americans. This came out in 2004, before Trump was even elected. So let's see if I can find, do I have that file here? Ba-bum, 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 too many files to look through to find what I need to find. So, um, um, yeah, I'm looking through my files here. Yeah, here it is. This is it, I guess. Yeah, okay, so make sure that you can see this. So stop share and then share screen, and you go here. So this is a report from last year. You can see a year ago, June 2024. So this is when this uh, Draghi report came out. And the Draghi report, there you see Mario Draghi, there you see the central bank director, Christine Lagarde, who, they and he's saying, in Mr. Draghi's view, public and private investment in the European Union needs to rise by additional €500 billion on the digital green transitions alone to keep pace with the Chinese and the Americans. So this is from a year ago. This report came out, and he's saying if we don't do this, we're going to become a second-rate economic as well as a political power in Europe. So you can read this story on your own here, uh, and um, and then Trump gets elected in November 2024. Trump wants to cooperate with the Russians. Trump says he doesn't like the European Union. Uh, European Union can no longer say, yes, NATO and the United States is the cornerstone of our defense security needs. And then the Europeans have to respond. And so one of the ways they're integrating this issue of borrowing lots of money and spending it to increase the economic competitiveness of the European Union by building infrastructure, building more capabilities, more roads, digital transitions, green energy, industry development, and so on, by marrying that with developing Europe's military industrial capacity, developing Britain's ability to provide high tech and low tech weapons, and the infrastructure to develop to deliver those weapons, to move those weapons around. So it appears to me that's what's going on. That basically, and this is how they will motivate and push their countries to accept these burdens. First off, they're going to borrow a lot more. They're going to go up to 5% gross domestic product on expenditure, supposedly by 2032, is the commitment of the Germans and the other. Now, again, I can't speak about all the European Union countries, but the Germans and the French, they're saying, yes, we're going to do this, and we're going to spend 3.5% of that 5% on weapons, and the other 1.5% will be spent on infrastructure so that you can use those weapons. So you need to have, for example, good railroads, good road infrastructure. If you're going to move those weapons around, if you're going to move European military units up from Germany to Latvia, you need railroads to do that. You need infrastructure, ports, seaports, and so on. So it seems to me that that's how the Europeans are combining national security emergency with the war in Ukraine, and the repeated statements that if Russia wins in Ukraine, it's not going to stop with Ukraine. It's going to punish. It's going to not punish. It's going to attack the Baltic states. It's going to use military threats against Poland to access the Suwalki Gap area to link up with. I hear the most outrageous statements on YouTube by people that claim to be experts. I mean, I was just listening to something this morning about how people predicting war with Russia. They're going to invade and occupy part of Poland. I mean, really? You really they think that's going to happen if Russia wins in Ukraine? I mean, I know Poland doesn't have nuclear weapons now, but they probably are going to get them pretty soon. I mean, if they really think they need them. I mean, and of course, we're not even talking about, I mean, aside from, Germany could make them in 48 hours if Germany wanted to. Japan as well. Okay, I know Poland, but I mean, I'm hearing this, and this is today's YouTube broadcast by really. I mean, so anyway, but the point is that that is a statement. Now, whether or not they can fulfill it, that's another question. These are words, right? So far, words. So we'll have to see what these governments do, and we have to see what the European Union does, and we have to see what the European Central Bank actually does, and we'll have to see if they're able to get these proposals through their parliaments, and who will be able to get it through and who will not. I mean, again, if you're Spanish or Portuguese, do you really want to add more debt to build up the Spanish military? Are Spanish soldiers? Is there going to be a Spanish Navy that's going to be part of this? I mean, Poland and the Baltic states, Sweden and Finland, yeah, I mean, they understand because they're right next door to this Russian threat. Germany, of course, is next to Poland. So yeah, Germany, maybe I could see them doing it, but is even Italy? I mean, is Italy? Italy is economically always been questionable, politically always been questionable. To get them, I mean, they're not even at 2% yet of their GDP, and that was what Donald Trump demanded. Italy will, all countries in NATO have to spend up to 2% of their gross domestic product on defense. Italy's at 1.5%. It's still not at 2%. Now they're going to go to 5%. And their debt is their accumulated public debt is, we can ask. Let's ask a co-pilot. Oh, mighty co-pilot, which stands in for a deity here. So we go here to co-pilot. Yeah, so we go here. Uh, what percent? What percent of GDP does Italy spend on defense? And it's going to say Italy spends 1.49%. So, and it's been reluctant to commit to the new 5% goal being pushed by the United States in NATO membership. So, so let me find that file here. Um, uh, yeah, so Europe wants to build a stronger defense industry, of course. So this is a report also from last year before Trump got elected from a year ago. You can see here there was a talk about okay, maybe we should agree with Emmanuel Macron's suggestion for strategic autonomy for the European Union. And of course, so yeah, this is from a year ago. And the Germans always used to say, we don't really want to support European autonomy from NATO. We don't want to in any way even imply that we want to distance ourselves from Washington. No, no, no. We don't really think this European defense autonomy is really feasible, even though the French talk a lot about it. They're the ones who talk about European sovereignty, strategic autonomy. Again, but Emmanuel Macron, he's the latest French president to talk in these terms. But the Germans are always the ones who say, no, I don't know. We don't think we want to do this, partly because, first off, they don't think that the other Europeans, particularly the Poles, are going to believe that the French are a reliable enough partner against Germany, given their history. Again, we highlighted before that the Germans believe that European integration has been possible up to now because the United States has been around to provide the security guarantee. So you don't have to really worry too much about Germany using its economic power to dominate, the Baltic states or Poland. As we covered before, right? The Polish economy has been transformed by German investment over the last 21 years, right? And the Poles will, more or less accept that because they don't believe that Germany has a military capacity that's independent of NATO, of the United States. Now, oh my God, Trump gets elected. And what are we going to do? So and now he's a problem. And of course, now the Germans are talking about going to 5%. So my question to you is to go back to this previous article, essay, and we go share screen, and we go here to this essay here. And so to give you some participation credit, to ask you, it says here, um, please respond to the following statement. To regain European Union's global economic competitiveness after Trump's reelection, the European Union needs to rely again on cheap Russian energy. And do you think that the European Union needs to? So cost. Let me see if I can find that quote. I thought maybe find costs. Um, I thought there was a statement about how they can't compete because they don't have the energy costs have gone up so high. Um, so um, so Europe is having a big problems in finding the money to invest to make it single market competitive with a increasingly predatory United States and China, which is also in competition with the United States and is therefore both a market for the Europeans, but also there's lots of comments about how the Chinese, since they're being shut out or restricted on American market access, they're trying to increase their exports around the rest of the world, including in Europe. So please respond to the following statement. To regain EU's global economic competitiveness after Trump's reelection, the European Union needs to rely again on cheap Russian energy, oil and gas, and other and coal, if that as well. So that's the assignment. So let's go to Zoom here and go back here. I guess I have to stop the share. And so we go then to chat, no more. So breakout rooms. So put you into breakout rooms. And so how many people we have here today? We have 14 people. I think that includes me. So if we divide it by four, let's say four breakout rooms. Okay. Assign automatically and create and open all rooms. And so join the rooms. So please join the rooms. Join the rooms. Join the rooms. Join the rooms. Please join the rooms. Please join the rooms.
Me?
All of you, I assigned you. I mean, you've been assigned, so please join them if you're not in them.
Okay. Uh, Sorry. What was the question?
Join the rooms. First, if you haven't joined the rooms, please join the rooms. Please join the rooms. If you haven't joined the rooms, please join the rooms. So Lo Yung Chen, Chui Wu, and Jie Junyu, please join room 4. Okay, and the question is, go back to Zoom here. Let's see here. So get this out of the way without closing everything. Share, and I go here. And the question is, please respond to the following statement. To regain the European Union's global economic competitiveness after Trump's reelection, the European Union needs to rely again on cheap Russian energy. So do you strongly agree, neutral cannot decide, disagree, strongly disagree? And so who's going to speak for the room? So who's going to speak for the room? So let's ask a co-pilot. And let's see if I can do this. How do I remember how to talk to Copilot? Um, let's see, Copilot. No, no. Okay, Copilot here. Copilot, pick a number between 1 and 3. Copilot, pick a number between 1 and 3. It's not talking to me. Hmm. It worked last time I did this, but it's not working now. Well, because I don't really know what I'm doing, probably. Copilot, let's see. Let's see here. So if I want to, hmm, if necessary, I'll just flip a coin like I always do. But I thought it would be really cool if I can ask Copilot like I did before. Hmm. Copilot, pick a number between 1 and 3. Copilot, pick a number between 1 and 3. Oh. No. Okay, well, I don't want to waste too much time on it. So, Copilot, talk to me. Copilot, Copilot, please talk to me. Oh, well. Okay, so let me just flip a coin. Heads, it's 1. Tails, it's 2 or 3. And it is tails. So it means in room 1, heads, Zhuting is heads, and it is heads. So Zhuting, you're going to speak for room 1. Room 2, let me see if can you. Room 2, Mila, your heads, and it is heads. So Mila speaks for room 2. Isabella, you're a head, and it is heads. So Isabella will speak for room 3. And nobody joined the rooms in room 4. So that's strange. But that's who's going to speak in response to your group's decision on this question about to be reliable. To be competitive, does the European Union need to go back to using cheap Russian gas and oil like it did up through until recently? Did Juting, you will speak for room 1, yes? Hello? Juting, are you there? Well, we're running out of time because we have to go to a debate. So I'm going to close the rooms and so okay, so you're all back now, and so we have the so who's going to speak first? So heads, it's group one or two, and it is heads. Heads, it's group one, and it is tails. So group two. So that means Mila. Mila, what do you
Yes.
think? Do you think that
So,
um, that that basically the European Union is going to have to go back to relying upon Russia for cheap energy if the European Union wants to be an economic actor that can compete with Washington, the United States under Trump and China?
so we think that, of course, it would be the easier way to get it fast, but in long term, it's better to not rely on Russia because of all the global shifts, and also to rely on an enemy just because it's easier is not the way to go.
Yeah, so you disagree or strongly disagree?
Disagree.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, the German economy hasn't grown in the last 3 years. Think about that. It has not grown in the last 3 years. And one of the reasons why is because of the lack of access to no longer having access to cheap Russian gas.
Yeah,
Think
but it's
about
more
that.
a
And
problem you have to work about.
that's before Trump started his trade war. Before Trump started his April 1st Liberation Day antics. Before he put on 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Europe and everywhere else. Before that. And before, well, now we're seeing there are people that around Trump that are trying to get Trump to approve the Americans purchasing the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines, to buy those pipelines so they continue to access the gas, presumably to sell the gas to the Europeans. Who's going to buy that Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 natural gas from Russia? It's going to do the pipelines, it's going to Europe. So it's just more and more evidence that the United States, under this administration, it does not like the European Union. I mean, and there's other evidence. There's lots of evidence for that. Comments by J.D. Vance calling the Europeans pathetic. That's a quote. Um, and so, in international relations, you have to be careful. I mean, you have to not overestimate what you're capable of doing. If the European Union is going to be a secondary political actor in the world, it might have to accommodate that. That means what? Coming to an agreement that Ukraine has to surrender, and while making sure that do what you can to keep Russia from. I mean, first off, the Ukrainians won't surrender, but basically accommodating Russian demands. Um, but keep that in mind. Even I mean, the German economy has not grown in 3 years. So really, really dependent upon that cheap Russian energy. Okay, so I don't want to scare people, but that's what we confront in this world today. And so back to breakout rooms, and we have here Heads, it's room 1. Tails, it's room 3. And it's heads. So where's Zhu Ting? Zhu Ting, did she run away? I think Zhu Ting ran away. Okay, well,
Yes.
Cosette, you're going to have to step in, Cosette.
Yes.
Oh, there's Zhu Ting.
Oh.
Zhu Ting's back. Okay, Zhu Ting. I don't see you in room 1 anymore. So, Zhu Ting, what did your group decide? Does the EU need to rely again on cheap Russian energy if it's going to be economically competitive?
The historic use of India as a political weapon by Russia demonstrates its unrelenting and the resources are the primary goal for competition, so it's not support.
No. So you disagree. I mean, I hope that if you spend half a trillion dollars every year on green energy, maybe that includes nuclear energy, and do it in the name of national security for the Europeans, that they can develop new sources of energy and no longer, but it means boosting nuclear big time. I mean, I think that's a controversial statement, but there's been lots of talk about, and of course, the Green parties in Europe don't like that, particularly in Germany. But they claim, that there are new forms of nuclear reactors that are called modular, smaller nuclear reactors. They don't have to be these huge, giant reactors that we are familiar with after, in the 20th century. That they're smaller. They're about the size of 2 soccer fields. You can build more of them. They're smaller. They're called modular systems. There's new technologies that they're supposedly safe. But I mean, it's going to require, and that'll be an interesting discussion in Europe about they really need to make a major commitment to fission nuclear reactor technology. They need to build many new nuclear reactors. Now, the French, they already have their nuclear fleet. They've all been full into. But then for the Germans, the Poles, and I guess if you're Poland, yeah, you probably want to do this because you want to, if you're not going to develop nuclear weapons, you want to look like you have the capacity to make them, particularly if you feel threatened by Russia. Um, so, that was one of the big criticisms of the Green Party in Germany, that it demanded that the nuclear reactors in Germany shut down after the Fukushima disaster happened here 15 years ago in Japan, right? But that might have been a mistake. Since they need as much energy as they can get that doesn't depend upon the Russians. So, and then group three, that is Isabella. Isabella, what did your group decide, Isabella?
So I think we are neutral because even
Can't decide.
it's because of course cheaper gas, it's more like I mean it's cheaper so it's more beneficial to Europe to be more competitive, but nowadays I feel like Europe is like it's doing well about being competitive even without it. It like the not without it but with reduce. So
Yeah, I mean, so you just neutral, you can't decide. I mean, again, it's a statement about basically if they are going to rely upon Russian energy, they're going to have to acquiesce to Russian demands towards Ukraine, which, people say various things like surrender. It means Ukraine has to give up at least 4 provinces along with Crimea. It's got to withdraw troops from there. It's got to be neutral. It can't have a large military again. I mean, and people are saying that's foolish. You don't appease an aggressive power. It just makes it more hungry, more aggressive. That will not bring peace to Europe. The only thing that will bring peace to Europe is to defeat Russia and Ukraine. And again, it's just people just don't know what to do other than the fallback is that the war will continue until either Russian government collapses or the Ukrainian government collapses because of the stress and strain, like what happened in World War I. There's a threat of collapse of the German army in 1918, and of course the German regime did collapse, the end of the monarchy, right? And then or that happens in Ukraine. And that means another year, 2 years of fighting, at least, which could dangerously escalate. God knows where that will go. And will the Russians even accept that? They might use nuclear weapons. I mean that's basically what this question is implying. But okay, so let me give you some participation credit. So we stop the share and we go back to sharing. Sorry to be so disappointing. I mean, isn't it really exciting to study international politics? It's so exciting, huh? So, what is the Chinese curse? Supposedly the Chinese curse that to say to somebody, may you live in interesting times, may you live in interesting times. Well, we certainly are living in interesting times, and they might get even more interesting. And so we'll have to see how this develops. So here we go back to the share screen. We go to vote, and as we live in interesting times, to ask you to vote here on yes. Please respond to the following statement. To regain the EU's global economic competitiveness with China and the United States after Trump's reelection, the EU needs to rely again on cheap Russian energy and basically, reach an accommodation with Russia over Ukraine. Basically, it's the unspoken part. So if you haven't voted, please vote there. And maybe ask you to vote on another one as well, since I have it set up here. Don't I have it set up? Maybe I don't have it set up. Oh, by the way, so I don't forget, next week we're going to be meeting in my office, and then we'll meet on Friday. So we'll meet on Friday, not on Monday, but on Friday, because we have a debate opportunity. No, nobody, last time I checked, had signed up for the debate. But if you still want to debate and get that 15% of your grade be a high grade, because, unless it's a disaster, you always get A's or A pluses unless something bad happens. Next Friday's your last chance. Okay. So I guess that's it. That is all that I set up for a debate. But yeah, okay. So let's go to our. That's it then. Let's go to then our debate between myself and Isabella, I believe. And so stop share, and I go back to the lesson plan here. Is that the lesson plan? Yes, that's the lesson plan. And you go here and you can see. So pro are kind of the following. To CUK students, the rise of Euroscepticism, the defeat of Trump, the policies of Trump, the defeat of Ukraine, the rise of Russia, and the rise of China, and the end of NATO mean that creating a single Eurozone currency was probably a mistake. So I'm pro. So let me set my timer, and I don't use all my time because I've gone over the amount of time we have available. So I set it for 6 minutes. And okay, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to be harsh, but in the lessons of classical realism, Hans Morgenthau, right, writing immediately after the Second World War, he emphasized the moral values, right? What's the role of morality in international relations according to realism? And I guess they would say they're highly moral. They're not immoral. It's not, always rip off another country if you can. It's be prudent. Think about the consequences of your actions, of your policies, particularly if you are the leader of your country. You are responsible for the well-being of the people in your country, which means you have to think about the consequences of your actions, of your policy decisions. That means you have to think about scenarios. What will be the consequence of your policy action? What will be the reaction of other actors today, maybe in the midterm, and to the best you can in the long term? Now, I know it's difficult to do, and it's difficult. It's very difficult, and you're not even certain you can ever be accurate, right? You're probably not going to be accurate. You don't have complete information. You don't have that, but you have to be prudent. You have to think about the consequences of your actions. And of course, there were people like Joseph Stiglitz and others that were always skeptical about this Eurozone plan. And when they dealt with the Eurozone crisis regarding Greece, things looked like, well, maybe the Eurozone does have the political support among the power centers of the European Union. And I'm not talking about Malta or Cyprus or even Italy. I'm talking about Berlin and Paris and their allies, the United States, the UK. They were willing to make this work. They were willing to make this, to support this. No, I don't think, back in 2016, 4 years after the Eurozone crisis began with Greece, nobody really expected, I mean, not nobody, but most people did not expect Donald Trump to win the election for president in November 2016. Most people were expecting Hillary Clinton would win and become the first female president of the United States, and we would continue our global effort at coordinating the developed mature democracies for the so-called rules-based international order, focus on China. Russia was a problem, but Russia, and then of course Trump got elected, and the Europeans didn't really know what to do. Emmanuel Macron made that statement in 2019, not talking about the European Union, but talking about NATO. He said the NATO is basically brain dead because Trump doesn't want to provide leadership for it. And Washington under Donald Trump didn't want to provide leadership. That's a quote, brain dead. Then Trump got defeated. The pandemic happened. Trump got defeated. And people wanted to believe that, that episode would go away and Joe Biden, would lead and maybe, get reelected or if not something. And then, of course, under the Joe Biden administration, Russia tried to occupy Kyiv, and that started a crisis that really became even bigger crisis than when Joe Biden got defeated. I mean, no, didn't get defeated. He decided and finally could not run for re-election, and Kamala Harris, his vice president, got defeated in November last year. And so, do we really want to believe that basically the Eurozone is going to work when we're getting all these indications that Trumpist forces are predominant in the United States? They're not going to be a framework that's going to the Europeans can rely on to support European integration. And there's 27 member states. Remember, this is not some fantasy. One country already left the European Union, Britain, and that was a surprise to most people. So now there's 27 left, and 21 in the Eurozone, with Bulgaria joining in January. And now it's under pressure, and centrifugal forces trying to pull it apart from Moscow and Washington. So it seems to me that if the European Union was really going to be a force for peace, it has to work very carefully so that it doesn't have any major enemies. If you're going to have the Eurozone, it cannot afford to have major threats if those threats include certainly the United States. And if the Europeans, because otherwise European integration and the single market, they're going to find somebody who's going to be willing to cooperate with Trump, with Washington, or Putin in Moscow. And so basically, maybe the European Union won't disappear, but it'll basically become marginal, irrelevant. I mean, the worst case example of that, of course, is the League of Nations. It didn't end; it just became irrelevant. Nobody paid attention to it when World War II broke out. It was gone. It existed on paper. But if there's going to be another financial crisis, and this is a global issue because we still economically have global interdependence, and now you have Trump putting tariffs on everybody and disrupting the Europeans even more, and the world even more. We're going back to the 1930s. And I don't know if the Europeans, individual European countries can provide the autonomy, the independence, the flexibility they need by having their own currencies, because it provides political flexibility, more political flexibility. Because right now they don't control their monetary policies. So maybe Joseph Stiglitz's recommendation about how to leave the European Union is worth following. Okay, Isabella, can you turn on your camera and make your presentation? Okay, so do you have something to share? You want to, okay, you can share. I can share the screen with you if you want to.
I just prepare like a
Okay,
speaking.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm con against the statement because I believe the creation of the euro was not a mistake. It was actually a strategic move to ensure stability, integration, and also strength for Europe. Also, the euro facilitates trade and attracts investments, and also it strengthens cooperation between the membrane states. And even facing the growing Euroscepticism is how I say Trump era policies, and also the rise of China and Russia that might threaten European stability. I believe the Eurozone remains one of the most stable and resilient regions in the world. Also, these global challenges, I believe, only make the European unity even more essential for the members, because a strong economic bloc with a shared currency will allows Europe to act as a strategic counterweight in international affairs. So it also it can provide autonomy for the member states. Also, the euro is above all an economic tool, and it should be evaluated by the performance of its stability and trade, not only by unrelated security issues. Also, there are few things that Europe has helped with help the member states. The euro helped reduce exchange rate volatility among member states and provide a stable environment for trade and economic cooperation. It also created a sense of shared identity and commitment among European countries. The Eurozone framework also promoted the increased competitiveness for countries like Ireland. Joining the euro contributed to economic growth and significant development. So it helped a lot of poor countries to be more prosperous. And also, the European integration, monetary integration, can also insulate the member states from a global financial volatility, like providing like a shield against currency fluctuations. Even though there have been severe debt crisis, the Eurozone has shown through the existing period that it has capacity for reforms, and that indicates that the project can adapt and improve over time. So even if there are flaws or they might have threats, there are room to improve and make the Eurozone even more stable. So basically, the Eurozone has faced critical design flaws, but its achievements has overbuilt the criticism. I believe so, and the Eurozone can be seen as a ongoing project that have a lot of benefits to the member states. And I also believe that giving up on the euro right now would mean giving up on fighting like for their autonomy. So I think unity is needed the most, especially right now.
Does anybody have an extra credit question to ask Isabella? Going once. Raise your hands if you do. Going twice. Going three times. Okay, so let me then make my response, and I won't use all of my time because Isabella will speak again for a second time. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, that's all standard argument about why the Eurozone is great. Okay, but I'm talking about reality, and I'm talking about what's happened since whatever that information was written. All right, we've already seen that statement of Khan assumes that the United States is not a predator, and the United States is a predator, and along with Russia being a predator. And if you might be a good European in Rome, or a good European in Madrid, or a good European in Lisbon, but you have to deal with the fact that there's 27 member states, and efforts will be made by Washington and Russia to divide and conquer, to divide the European Union. And they're not going to be that concerned about the well-being of Europeans. They're going to be concerned about America and Russia, respectively. And and of course, there's going to be people within the European Union who are willing to cooperate with the United States or Russia. They're going to be, for example, it would just seem to me that Poland is not going to join the Eurozone. Now, you might say, well, the countries that are in the Eurozone, they'll never leave. Well, never say never. I mean, if you've got countries in the Eurozone like Slovakia, if Czechia and Poland, for example, make a free trade agreement, and Hungary make a free trade agreement with the United States and get American soldiers on their territory as part of their security arrangements, I mean, I could well imagine Slovakia saying, well, maybe we'll undertake that orderly withdrawal from the Eurozone that I showed you in that Wikipedia entry that I sent to you on my comments to on your paper, on your paragraphs. I mean, these are the situations that these confront. And I should say, even as Bulgaria is joining the Eurozone, Steve Hanke, the professor of economics at Johns Hopkins University, who set up the currency board for Bulgaria 30 years ago, he came to Bulgaria and said Bulgaria should not join the Eurozone. And I think he said should not join the Eurozone for the very problems that he's foreseeing, that this thing was a mistake. And if you're not in it, you should take advantage of that fact. So don't join the Eurozone. But of course, the Bulgarian leadership, they're all pro-Europhiles, so they want to join the Eurozone. They don't want to make the Americans angry. Okay, so what's your response to my comments, Isabella? What's your rebuttal?
My rebuttal. Let me think. Wait. So I think it was not a mistake, because even if there is no like supposedly sovereignty, the countries that are in the Eurozone, they control of like social and financial important policies, and also I still believe that the European Eurozone, it's empowered the countries that join it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Go ahead. More? Do you have more to say?
I don't, it's just like, I believe that the joining Eurozone is not a mistake, because if it can bring more stability to your country, as like in economical sense.
And does anybody have a question for Isabella? Please speak up or raise your hand or both, or whatever you want to do if you want to have a question. And if not, then let me make my concluding statement. Yeah, I mean, I just want to show you, I mean, what I said about earlier. I mean, I was surprised about this, that Steve Hanke the professor of economics, who I think is a right-wing economist, but he's well known, right? Why does Steve Hanke oppose Bulgaria? Can you see this? I mean, make sure you can see the right thing. You can see what I'm typing here. Um, uh, Oppose Bulgaria joining the Eurozone and joining the Eurozone. And he says, Steve Hanke, professor of applied economics, has expressed some reasons for Bulgaria opposing Bulgaria's adoption of the euro. He says should maintain its currency board, so the money is pegged. Bulgarian currency is currently pegged to the euro. He believes that switching to the euro could limit Bulgaria's option of economic instability, as leaving the eurozone would no longer be possible as the country adopts a currency officially. And of course, with Trump in power, we're talking instability, political and economic instability. Hanke also warns that the adopting it could likely increase inflation. He emphasized Bulgaria's current monetary sovereignty allows it to adjust the currency peg if the euro faces challenges, a flexibility that would be lost by joining the eurozone. And so he was the person that 30 years ago got the credit for setting up the currency board in Bulgaria when Bulgaria was in hyperinflation. And I remember when that happened, right? I contacted him. I asked him if he wanted to participate on our panel in Washington in November, and he said no, he's going to be away because he's a famous guy, so he's all over the world, right? So so even he is saying, that Bulgaria should not join the eurozone. And of course, even the opponents within Bulgaria to joining the eurozone, they say, yeah, it would be a disaster. They say it would be a disaster for a number of reasons because Bulgaria, they say, institutionally is still too corrupt and unstable to be able to manage its own affairs. So it would be a bomb within the eurozone itself. Of course, now about the other countries that are in the eurozone. Let's say Bulgaria does or does not join on January 1, but that the countries that are in there now, if it just seems to me that the eurozone requires allies. It requires a more or less benign international political environment. The European Union was not supposed to be a threat to anybody. And for good or bad, the European Union has come to be perceived as a threat by Moscow. And of course, the Moscow propaganda, Russian propaganda coming out now is always attacking Europeans, claiming the rise of neo-Nazism. I talked about that in class. So would that go away if the European Union was separate from the United States in Russia's perception, in Moscow's prevailing view, in its eyes of Moscow? And the European Union becomes seen as a benign entity that they want to support, and the Chinese want to support, and the Americans want to support because American companies and Chinese companies and Russian companies make money in the single market, and the single market should be maintained, and then the Eurozone helps the single market. That requires radical change in the international political system. And it basically means separation of Washington from Brussels. And as perceived in Moscow. And would Moscow then become nice to the Europeans and the Ukrainians, and including the Ukrainians? Some people say no. They're on the warpath. It's too late. That if that was going to be stopped, that needed to happen 12 years ago before Russia. It should have happened before the overthrow of the pro-Russian government in Moscow under Viktor Yanukovych, that pro-Russian president who won the election in 2010 become president of Ukraine. It's too late now. You can say that shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have been so blatant in support of it. But here we are what are we going to do in 2025? And it's just hard to believe that the Europeans can do this on their own. And so they should prepare for the dismemberment of the European Union as a real actor. So sorry to be so depressing, but so go ahead and please vote on the vote debates questions I asked you on the cyber campus. So please do that. And yeah, so what else to highlight here? Yeah, so Readiness 2030, that's the European Union's program that they've adopted for redeveloping their defense capabilities. And so this will link up and marry with the competitiveness report, I think, to basically be a way by which the Europeans will attempt to use the national security emergency to increase dramatically borrowing of money to rebuild their economies to supply the military, which includes a lot of high tech capacities. And also, you can say, well, we need to go green because we can't burn Russian fossil fuels anymore. We can't burn gas from Russia, and we don't want it from America because Trump is a threat. So we need to develop our own. So that will be the overarching political rhetorical framework for big increase in economic investment to develop Europe's power potential base, including its capability base as well as its mobilization base. So that's where we'll stop today. So thank you. And I'll see you in my office next week, right? Bye. Any questions? If not,
Bye.
bye.